Hey, good morning. My name is Amanda Rivera. I'm the hearing examiner presiding over today's case. The date is May 9th, 2024, and this is case REZ2023-00031. It's a conventional rezoning request in North Fort Myers. Because this is a quasi-judicial hearing, all evidence and testimony must be taken under oath. So if you intend to speak, if you could please raise your hand. Do you swear or affirm the testimony you will provide is the truth?
I do.
Okay, thank you. We don't have any members of the public here, so I will dispense with those instructions and we can begin with the applicant whenever you're ready. Good morning.
Good morning, Madam Hearing Examiner. Please forgive me because I forgot my reading glasses, so I'm wearing Dean's so that I can see this morning. I do have, I'm going to start from the beginning. Veronica Martin, Senior Planner with TDM Consulting, representing the applicant, 14290 North Cleveland Avenue, LLC. I have been accepted as an expert witness in the LEED plan and the Land Development Code previously, and I have been, would like to be accepted again as such today.
Yes, thank you.
I have one exhibit to enter into the record today, and it's a copy of today's PowerPoint presentation.
Thank you. That will be applicant exhibit 1, and I did get a 48-hour letter, so that's applicant exhibit A. Thank you.
The request before you today is a conventional rezoning of a 0.52 acre parcel from agricultural AG2 to commercial C1. The applicant owned multiple lots along North Cleveland Avenue and combined those lots, creating a split zoning on the large overall parcel. The subject parcel is outlined in red, which you can see right here. The combined parcel I outlined in yellow. So you can see what the 6.41 acres looks like. Now this little corner parcel here belongs to this parcel here. When they widened North Cleveland Avenue, that was the split.
Okay, so that is notched out.
It's notched out.
My first question to you was to kind of walk me through that, because I did the site visit and I saw the sign on the vegetated portion.
Yes.
But I know that there's the code violations, which I'm sure you're going to get into, but I'm trying to keep it straight as to what goes with what. So the property to the south, the triangle, that's actually part of the 6.41 acres?
No.
That's something else?
This property right here?
No, the one that's developed, that one.
Yes, I'm sorry, yes. Everything that's outlined in yellow, from this line down to this corner, up to that corner, and then back to almost the corner of Touchstone Road, and then back to the subject property. So it includes the used car sales area, this huge open storage area, the vegetated area, and this is it used to be called Amazon Sheds, but I think they recently changed their name. Whoops, sorry. My thumb got a but they do have sheds on display. So they sell sheds here right now.
Okay, so the cohesive 6.41 acres is inclusive of those two properties?
Yes.
And is there a plan for, because it talked about unifying zoning across those, is there a unified development plan as well?
There will be.
Changing? Okay.
Yes.
Okay. I don't want to get ahead of myself, but that was very confusing in all of the documentation, and with that other triangular piece being notched out, it wasn't clear to me at the outset which triangle we were talking about, so thank you.
It is very confusing because originally we were going to rezone this property as a CPD and for a consistent rezoning. Then, because this parcel was zoned AG2, but then he combined the parcels and we're like, well, why would we do a CPD when we can just rezone this little triangular piece of property to C1 for a consistent C1 zoning? So I hopefully will be able to answer all of your questions as we go through the slides. The site outlined in red, the 0.52 acre property, is located at 14180 North Cleveland Avenue. It is in the North Fort Myers planning community. It's approximately 1/4 mile north of Pondella Road and just south of Touchstone Road. There are 2 code violations on the property in conjunction with the 6.41 acre property. Violation 2022-03229 and violation 2022-03230, and I will discuss those later on. The property does have a future land use classification of intensive development. The LEED plan describes the intensive development future land use category as being located along major arterial roads in areas with the highest level of urban services. The future land use category is best suited to accommodate high densities and intensities and encourages mixed use developments where appropriate. Residential, commercial, and limited light industrial uses are permitted in the intensive development future land use category. However, agricultural zoning districts are inconsistent with the intensive development future land use category. The 0.52 acre property is located within the mixed use overlay. Conventional zoning districts are encouraged within the mixed use overlay to promote redevelopment. It does permit developers to utilize land development regulations that allow for more urban forms of development. In addition to the mixed use overlay, the property is also located along a designated commercial corridor as defined in the North Fort Myers community plan. And this slide shows that although the property that we're here to rezone today, the 0.52 acre parcel, is within the mixed use overlay, there is a small portion of the overall 6.41 acre site that is not within the mixed use overlay for some reason. So when we go through the development order process, we'll address it at that time. This is the zoning map that was provided by Lee County. And as you can see on the zoning map, the majority of the properties surrounding the subject property are zoned C1. The other lots surrounding this property are zoned CPD, C-1A, and CN2. The property is surrounded by commercial development, and again, the agricultural zoning district in green is inconsistent with the future land use category and the North Fort Myers community plan. The property to the northeast and south of this site includes the lots the applicant combined to create the 6.41 acre property. The lots to the north again, and this is a more current aerial, so this is where the used car lot's located. This area is open storage, and this is part of the code violation. You can see where they expanded the open storage, and they did this without a development order permit. And they added fill here to this site. So that's a portion of the code violation. The property to the south was redeveloped with the retail sales and display of storage of the sheds. The code violation here is because the landscaping is missing, and there are other instances where the development order is no longer in compliance. Across the street with CPD zoning on the west side of Cleveland Avenue, the property has CPD zoning and is for a mini warehouse. Urban services are available and adequate to serve the development. The site does have access to North Cleveland Avenue, a state-maintained arterial road. Potable water is provided by Lee County Utilities. Sanitary sewers provided by Florida Governmental Utility Authority. Fire and EMS is provided by North Fort Myers Fire District Station 2. Police protection is provided by Lee County Sheriff's Office Precinct 2 on Pundella. Public transit runs along North Cleveland Avenue, Lee Tran Route 140. Judd Community Park is located just west of North Cleveland Avenue on Evergreen, and solid waste is provided by Lee County Franchise Area 5 and served by Waste Pro. So the applicant has demonstrated compliance with the LEED plan through the narrative of request. My presentation will touch briefly on the goals, objectives, and policies, and I'm going to do more detailed information in certain areas. The proposed rezoning to the C1 zoning district is consistent with the intensive development future land use category. And again, the current agricultural zoning district is inconsistent with the intensive development future land use category. Objectives 2.1, development location, and 2.2, development timing, promote compact and contiguous growth patterns within designated future urban areas where adequate public facilities exist. Potable water and sanitary sewer lines are proximate to the site, and both LCU and FGUA have provided letters of availability confirming there is capacity available to serve future development. The applicant will be required to comply with the environmental requirements at time of development order permitting. This is consistent with objective 4.1, water, sewer, and environmental standards. The proposed C1 zoning district permits both commercial and multifamily residential uses. Rezoning to C1 is prohibited unless the property is within the mixed-use overlay, which this property is. Goal 5 of the LEED plan sets forth the objectives and policies for residential land uses. Policy 5.1.3 of the LEED plan directs high density residential developments at locations that are near employment and shopping centers, close to parks and schools, and are accessible to mass transit and bicycle facilities. This site is located along a major arterial road with access to Lee Tran and pedestrian and bicycle facilities. It's located just north of the intersection with Pundella, which does provide opportunities for employment and shopping. And again, urban services, including parks and schools, are available to serve the site. Goal 6 of the LEED plan establishes the objectives and policies to facilitate orderly and well-planned commercial developments at appropriate locations within the county. The future land use class of intensive development along a major commercial corridor per the North Fort Myers Community Plan is located within the mixed-use overlay. Urban services are available and adequate. Public transit and pedestrian facilities, again, are located adjacent to the property. This site will be analyzed for traffic and access impacts, site design, landscaping, open space, screening and buffering, parking, surface water management, and environmental considerations at the time of DO permitting. And this request is consistent with Goal 6 of the LEED plan. Again, this site is located in the mixed-use overlay. The C1 zoning district does permit both commercial and multifamily residential uses. Policy 11.2.4 does encourage conventional zoning districts within the mixed-use overlay to promote redevelopment. Policy 17.3.4, a public information meeting was held on October 3rd, 2023 at the North Fort Myers Recreation Center. The North Fort Myers Community Planning Panel was supportive of the redevelopment of this site along a commercial corridor. Rezoning to the C1 zoning district is consistent with Goal 30, the North Myers Community Plan, which is to improve the livability and economic vitality in the North Myers Community Plan area. Policy 30.1.3 encourages a diversity of housing types by supporting mixed-use projects within the mixed-use overlay. The North Myers Community Plan designates commercial corridors, including North Cleveland Avenue. Objective 30.2 does encourage revitalization of the corridors, and rezoning the site from AG2 to C1 is consistent with the North Myers Community Plan. Goal 125 and policies 125.1.2 and 126.1.4 address surface water management. The applicant will be required to provide surface water management at time of local development order permitting. The applicant has proven entitlement to this conventional rezoning district as set forth in Land Development Code section 34-145D4. It does comply with the LEED plan. It meets the Land Development Code and other applicable code regulations, is compatible with existing and planned uses in the surrounding area, will provide access sufficient to support the proposed development intensity. The expected impacts on transportation facilities will be addressed by existing county regulations and conditions of approval, and will not adversely affect environmentally critical or sensitive areas and natural resources, and will be served by urban services. The hearing examiner did issue a finding of violation for the 2 code violations, and she has given the applicant until September 25th, 2024 to either abate the violations or correct the conditions. So we will be working with the development order to either correct or abate those violations if the rezoning is approved. Well, in either case, if it's approved, we'll work on that, and if it's not approved, we'll still submit a development order to make those corrections.
Did those code violations touch this specific parcel, though? It sounded like when you went through them, they really went to the eastern portion of the expansion of the northern area, and then the southern area kind of worked up, it sounds like. And I understand in the context of the 6.41 acre development why we're talking about it, but specific to this rezoning, looking at it as solely the 0.52 acres, I think it is site, and whether it qualifies and meet the criteria, do those restoration activities have anything to do with this actual site?
So when I did my site visit before and after Hurricane Ian, and we had an environmental study before and after Hurricane Ian, because we wanted to know what damage was done by the hurricane and what changes were made by the applicant. So I can say that this encroachment here was made by the applicant. However, and you can't see it from this aerial, it does appear that there may have been trees in this area here, and I can't tell you exactly where or how far they extend, that were removed to access this area. And this area at one time had been wetlands, so there was filled dirt brought in. I accessed this site, and I actually visited this site both times with Aaron Martin, who now works for TDM, but who previously worked for Lee County Environmental Sciences. So we accessed the site here and walked this way, and then we accessed the site here and walked this way. So we, pretty much did the whole site. Again, I'm not an expert in which areas were, how far the applicant made changes to this site. I know there were changes in this area. I can't say that it went all the way to the property, to 40 went and affected this site. Dean did attend the code violation hearings. When I did my visit, I didn't see that there was a road or connection through here. It just looked like they went this way and this way. But
So is I guess the question, because the address at least that's associated with the code violation isn't the same as this, but there have been lot combinations, and I don't know if those were intervening since the beginning or not, because, and my question again, is a conventional rezone, it's a very limited scope that we're looking at, so I don't want to get into additional requirements that aren't actually encumbering this particular property if they aren't relevant in that context, but it's difficult to know because of I don't know the timeline of those factors. If the code violation happened and then the lot splits or the lot combinations occurred, that might impact that, because just looking at it, it appears as if they're completely separate and that it doesn't touch this particular parcel, which would make sense because particularly with respect to the DO, this parcel, from what I understand, wasn't subject to any kind of development order prior to this rezoning request. So I don't know if is there a pending DO now that would encumber the whole property?
No.
Okay.
We haven't started I mean, it's just barely started. We start with a master concept plan for a commercial plan development for strictly commercial, but then the applicant has decided to go a different route. So that master concept plan, which we normally turn into the site construction plans, will change. And we had to have a new survey done to encompass the new changes.
That was another question, because there was reference, I think it was in the FGUA letter, that when that request was made, it included a residential component for multifamily. So
Yes.
it appeared to be a true mixed-use
Yes.
site plan that was being contemplated, but obviously not included because it's a conventional rezoning. But that would be the intention at this time, would be to do a
Yes.
holistic mixed-use plan on the 6.41
ma'am.
acres. Okay. I think that covered what I had, and then obviously we'll come back around after we hear from staff. if
Yes,
there's any
Beth
questions.
and staff may have additional information regarding the code violations.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm ready for staff whenever you are. Good morning.
Good morning. My name is Beth Workman. I'm a principal planner in the zoning section. I have been accepted as an expert in the Lee Plan and Land Development Code, and I wish to do so today as well. Thank you. Okay, well, Miss Martin stole all my thunder because she did a very good presentation, but I have, for the record, PowerPoint presentation. So there's one. Would you like one, Dee? You want one, Dee? Okay. I have extras.
Thank you. So I'll make the presentation. Thank you. Staff Exhibit 2 and Staff Exhibit 1 is the staff report.
Okay, so the case before you today is REZ 2023-00031. It's 14290 North Cleveland Avenue. The request and recommendation is to rezone the 0.52 acres from agricultural to commercial, and staff is recommending approval. We've kind of gone over the background a little bit. So this is in the intensive development future land use category. The zoning district is AG2. The AG2 piece is a zoning district within a bigger parcel that is made up of 2 C1s, because this property was 3 individual pieces at one time. And I'm going to kind of go over that because there was a commercial, or it was a mixed plan development that came in. We were reviewing a plan development when staff did the site inspection for the plan development and discovered the violation. And the stop work order and everything else happened. And I can kind of go over what we saw on the property when we walked it. It is in the mixed use overlay, as Ms. Martin explained, but the open storage area up here is left out. So at time of DO, how that rolls out, the applicant can, receive some of the the discounted landscape buffers, no setbacks, reduced open space on these pieces, but on this, it'll have to meet the land development code for North Fort Myers commercial corridor. So going over this, Ms. Martin did a really good job kind of explaining this, because when the original plan development came in, there were three pieces to this puzzle that staff was reviewing. So we had the C1s and we had this AG2 piece, and this cutout piece belongs to this piece down here.
No, you had the right one first. It's the straight, their address is 318 Pondella. No, straight down. Nope,
This one.
Nope, over.
To the east.
To the right. Straight down. Nope, cross the
Straight
street.
south. Straight
Maybe,
south.
maybe you want to get up and point to it.
Yeah,
Can you state your name for the record?
it used to make a square, obviously.
Mr. Chris, can you state your name, please, too, for the record?
Randy Chris,
Thank
property
you.
owner. That's how it was at one
Oh.
time, and for some reason, they won't sell me that, and there's nothing they can do with it.
And I can show it to you on the lease, our website, because if I highlight that, it's going to pull that. So there were three pieces of this puzzle. Staff was reviewing a plan development. We went out to the site to inspect it. Our code enforcement staff had already been out there to post a stop work. We parked, as Ms. Martin parked, down here because we wanted to look at this piece, because staff had an environmental assessment for the whole entire thing that showed no impact. So I had an original what was there, and we were looking at the wetlands in here, and we came and we walked up this way, and there is a makeshift kind of like, sort of like a little pathway that we walked up. When we got to this area right here, there's up 4 feet of fill. So we climbed up some riprap and into this area and walked through here. This site has a development order that was approved on it and is not in compliance because they removed the buffer back here and the open space doesn't meet what it was in the development order. So it's all wrapped up in that violation, as well as the impacts to this area down here and then some of the removals. So, and then this not being in compliance with the original DO because you have separate DOs on these. So now the PD was withdrawn. The lots were combined. And so now we have C1, C1, and an AG2. We're rezoning just this to C1 to match up with the zoning districts on the rest of the parcel. So that kind of runs through it a little bit because we have an original protected species survey and everything showing what was in those areas of impact.
And that was done in conjunction with the plan
The
development.
plan development, yes.
And that did not reveal, from what I read, any protected species on the site.
No.
It didn't touch on wetlands, but specific to this triangular parcel.
This piece right here is mostly pine flatwoods. Hydric pine flatwoods is what I saw on it, with some exotics, open areas, kind of disturbed in some areas, no roadway going through. So they didn't really access that to impact. So, I mean, when this comes in collectively, the applicant's going to have to meet the open space, the indigenous open space, the publicly accessible open space for North Fort Myers, you know, some of the, and then the protected tree code in North Fort Myers as well. So that kind of runs through the history. That's why staff didn't bring in the protected species survey and the REZ because it's not required, but we kind of had a glimpse of what was there. So the rezone criteria Ms. Martin went through. So I'm going to touch on the Lee plan and some of these things and fill in some of the gaps, but there's not a lot of gaps in her presentation. So intensive development, going to C1 is an allowable, you know, rezone to intensive development because it is on a major arterial road in North Cleveland Avenue. That makes it suitable for the high density intensities. It is, you know, a good spot for a mixed use development, as the intensive development policy 1.1.2 speaks to, and then encourages objective 11.1, which talks about the mixed use development within these categories. And so the intensive development is preferred to have a mixed use components within it. And the glimpse of the plan development that we had showed that. Now what goes forward, that will be reviewed at time of development order. Not going to belabor these objectives and policies, but the site, the development location does have the arterial road. It is surrounded by commercial uses. It does have the urban services, and it is on potable water and sewer with FGUA for the sewer, as well as Lee County Utilities for the potable water. Speaking to those, and then the letters of availability do speak to the PD use, but it was used over in the REZ with significant, substantial availability. So the environmental component I kind of already touched on. They will need to do some restoration on the property off-site. This property, no, there's no impacts on this property. But because this property is part of, this zoning district is in a bigger, larger, the combination acreage, the applicant's not going to be able to get a development order until the violations are abated. So going to C1 on this will help them to further the zoning districts to get the uses and then design the site at DO time. Commercial uses, if they decide to go to commercial on this, it is in the commercial corridor. It does meet the North Fort Myers community plan objectives and policies. Don't really have much to say. Commercial uses to the north, south, and east. The AG2 piece, I mean, it's not really abutting this piece, but the AG2 in this vicinity are a mix of vacant land and residential. Because when standing here, there was kind of this residential structure that sits back in here. But for our piece right here that we're looking at this whole thing, mostly commercial, because this is a commercial corridor. In this whole area is an intensive development future land use category. I'm not going to belabor these policies, but 6.1.3, 6.1.6, at time of development order, they'll have to demonstrate interconnects, internal and external sidewalks, and buffering. The 6.1.4, that should be C1, sorry. The C1 zoning district kind of blends in with the surrounding commercial uses. The letter of availabilities from LCU and FGUA. The traffic carrying, the turn lane, this will be evaluated at time of DO if there are any improvements for traffic depending on what their use is. So depending on what they come in with the development order, if there needs to be turn lane improvements or what have you, then that will be evaluated at time of DO. They'll have to meet the C1 setbacks because this is going to be conventionally zoned. Anything that they cannot meet will need to come back through in a variance. So, or if it could be amended administratively through the Land Development Code, through Development Services. Goal 30, this is an economic component for the commercial corridor. They'll have to demonstrate most of these things at time of development order for the internal, external sidewalks, as I mentioned before, the interconnects. The preservation of native trees comes into play here in 33-1582 in the North Fort Myers Land Development Code. And then anything that can be utilized in the mixed use overlay in Chapter 10, 425 for landscaping and open space can be utilized unless a use that they're proposing is listed in Land Development Code 10-424. So 424 speaks to open storage. So you're not going to get 5-foot buffers for mixed use with open storage. So I just draw your attention to that because if they decide to put that area in the mixed use overlay, the open storage that's there right now, it's not going to be able to utilize the mixed use overlay. Staff just wanted to point out the encouragement of viable tracks. This still has some wetlands on it. When they decide to come in to do their development order and abate the violations, they will be required to provide indigenous open space. There are still viable indigenous on the site that staff encountered in the eastern side. But as for this piece, it is in a pine flatwood with very little exotic, so they could utilize some of that area to meet buffering or their indigenous open space if they choose to do so. This policy 125.1.2 is for surface and groundwater, as well as the green infrastructure components. At time of development order, they will need to provide, any littorals for their wet detentions and dry detentions. They can choose to plant them if they want to reduce some general tree requirements. They will need an ERP through the development order process. So the surrounding uses, Ms. Martin went over, majority is a commercial use with some AG2 residential down here. You have the storage facility across the street from the subject parcel. You do have this PD component down here, which is like warehouse, contractor, builder, kind of industrial, light industrial, commercial component. And then the Amazon, it might not be called that, the shed. Iguana shed place here. And then the open storage that's on this. And then this is kind of a display sale of
Car lot.
Vehicles.
It's a car lot.
And then the surrounding uses kind of blend in with that C1 that they're proposing to do on the subject parcel. Like I said, it does abut the North Tamiami Trail. It's a state-maintained road. Mentioned that. Sufficient to support the proposed intensity. Anything for the roadway improvements will be evaluated at time of DO. I mentioned these sections of code for the environmentally sensitive areas. There are some indigenous on the site, so they will demonstrate the indigenous being met through 10425 is the mixed use overlay. The 331582 is part of the North Fort Myers Community Plan Code for tree protection. And then publicly accessible open space is on top of the required open space for mixed use overlay. So they'll need to demonstrate that as well. There are utilities. It's within 2 miles of fire and EMS. The sheriff's office is within 0.6 miles of the site. That's all I have. Staff believes that the project meets the criteria to be conventionally rezoned to C1. And I'm here if you have any questions.
Thank you, very
I
nice.
had a lot of questions, but I think that you both addressed them as we went through. So thank you both for the staff
Okay.
report and your thorough presentations, but let me check just to be sure.
Sure.
Most of my questions really just dealt with being sure, although I understand the kind of evolution of this case and why it's being treated cohesively, the fact is we've got to evaluate it on its own. So as respect to this parcel, what realistically could it host if it were to separate for whatever reason? I mean, it's of sufficient size that it could develop with something from the C1 category, I would assume, if
Yeah.
it's not developed with the rest of
If
it.
it, let's just say that it's split off and it's C1, it's in the mixed use overlay. So it could be developed under the C1 uses as long as they didn't choose to do one of the uses that are in the 10-425 or 424 that would trigger the bigger buffers, like display sale isn't going to work there. Like an office, like small retail, that kind of thing would work. Anything with a drive-through, fast food convenience wouldn't work. So to look at that, you would have to really tap into what is allowed in North Fort Myers, in the schedule of uses for North Fort Myers, and then what that you pick is not in the 10-424, because you want to tap into the mixed use overlay, because it's 5-foot buffers and no buffers on the north, south, and east. So really, you would just get the 5-foot, and then you would have all that land to be able to develop on, with stormwater management, of course. So,
When you evaluated it, staff looked at that individually and as well as
correct,
the larger 6.41 acres. So both were evaluated, it sounds like, and still found to be
Correct.
consistent and compatible.
correct, yes, yes.
That was the extent of the questions that I had. Were there any closing comments that anybody wanted to make? Okay, thank you. I do want to thank you both again. As I said, I did have a number of questions because there were a lot of moving parts on this one, but thank you both for your thorough presentations and written reports. And so because it's a conventional rezoning, it's final with me, and I don't expect it to be too terribly long before this gets released. So thank you for coming today. Thank you for all of your help, and stay well and stay